Good evening and welcome everybody to Priorities and Challenges of the Circular Economy, Environmental Sustainability and Waste Management, a webinar organized by Centro Exuf and Luke, Catania University. I really believe that the circular economy is a crucial issue for the future of the Earth, since it's one of the main tools at our disposal to achieve the energy transition. Together with green energy, circular economy will allow us to preserve our planet for future generations. At the same time, it will allow companies to achieve better performance in the medium to long term. Today, we will discuss all of these topics with several industry experts. But first, I turn the floor over to Federico Visconti, Dean of Luke Catania University.
Thank you, Laura, and good evening to everybody. A few words to introduce this event. I read that the event is the third event of a series, and I am sure that is not the last, because the center is working, is creating know-how, and it's very engaged in disseminating knowledge. And this is the reason why Luke created the center. So I have to thank Anna Gervasoni as director and the other colleagues involved in the center activity. A second reason is that I think that one important challenge for the future is to share know-how, starting from different academic fields. And I read that for today the program is to discuss issues like environmental sustainability, waste management, and project financing. So I think that the event will be a good opportunity to explore, to practice cross-fertilization. And a third issue of my introduction is that I believe that know-how generation needs different contribution, theoretical and at the same time practical, academic, like me or like Anna or like Giorgio, and professionals, manager coming from the field, as we said, So many thanks to Anna and to Exuf and to the panelists for this opportunity. As you know, Luke is investing on this field, and it's important for us to have this opportunity to share and to discuss on the future of the circular economy and at the same time of the finance for the circular economy. Thank you, and good luck for the event.
Thank you to the Dean Federico Visconti, and now let's start with the opening remarks. For first, I call Giampiero Bambagioni, Vice Chairman, United for Smart Sustainable Cities.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, everybody. The current international situation is very complex at the environmental, at economic and social level. So let me highlight only some aspects strictly related to environmental phenomena and to circular economy. First evidence: the world population will reach 9.6 billion by 2050. The equivalent of 3 planets could be required to provide the natural resources needed to sustain the current lifestyles. In this slide, we can better see the trends of global populations. A second evidence: the world population, the European Commission last 30 March has adopted, has proposed to adopt a circular economy action plan. The economy action plan is strictly connected with the European Green Deal. Considering that 80% of the impact of the products is determined in the design phase, it is very relevant to plan initiative and also regulation to implement these aspects. The EU action plan include sustainable products initiative, including the proposal for the eco-design for sustainable product regulation proposal for empowering consumers in the green transition, and the proposal for revised construction products. For example, building and construction is very relevant in this framework. Construction products 30% of the EU's annual waste generation is linked to construction products, to construction and to construction works. 40% of the EU energy consumption is linked to buildings, and cement, steel, aluminium, and plastic is the 50% of the EU carbon emission. Well, the regulation, the proposal for the regulation is include rules on how to express the environmental, including climate and safety performance of construction products, environmental, including climate, functional and safety product requirement for construction products. Well, some word about the United for Smart Sustainable Cities. In this context, United for Smart Sustainable Cities is promoting a series of initiatives. Key performance indicators for smart sustainable cities. United guidelines on tools and mechanisms to finance smart sustainable cities projects. Again, a guide to circular cities. In the guide is highlighted as 4 components constitute the key components in the circular cities implementation. City asset and products, circular actions, circular city outputs, and so on. Well, city asset, for example, city assets and products imply link a connection with city infrastructure, city resources, and the city goods and services. Let me conclude with some comments to highlight that sustainability is at the same time a goal and a necessity, which involves action with a holistic approach at an environmental, economic, and social level. At the same time, since we don't have 3 planets from which to extract the natural resources needed to sustain current lifestyles, we need to change our lifestyles, starting with the core culture of designing, manufacturing, and using products. It's relevant also to promote this circular economy. On the other hand, it's important regulation. Regulation, for example, in the EU, imply to respect taxonomy for sustainable activities, but imply to adopt other regulation, for example, corporate sustainability reporting directive and construction products regulation. We need to promote, with an holistic approach, life cycle management and life cycle assessment. to obtain to perform the goal of quality of life. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you to Giampiero Bambagioni, and now I give the floor to Giorgio Ghiringhelli, Professor Luke, Università Cattaneo, and CEO Ars Ambiente.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Laura, for presentation, and good afternoon to everyone. Special thanks goes to Professor Anna Gervasoni, ex-UF Excellence Center, for the invitation. I'm very glad to speak about my field of interest about 25 years, integrate waste management and circular economy, and using evocative image, I would like to tell you about the end of waste. We must start from the principle that in nature waste doesn't exist. This image is a brief history of consumption. Scrap and overproduction arise with the linear economy model and are an economic and managerial problem for citizens, businesses, and public institutions. The generation of waste is closely linked to the economic system, and it depends on production and consumption model, lifestyles, and settlement models. It will be necessary to identify economic models that lead the decoupling between GDP growth and waste generation. Waste is also the center of interest of the circular economy and also the green economy, but is not even considered in the traditional academic representation of the business value chain. As Giampiero Bambagioni said before, waste management is subject to a European management hierarchy, implementing also in the Italian environmental law. The preferred gestion option is waste prevention or reduction, followed by reuse, recycling, and also as a last option, energy recovery and disposal. The EU set challenging goals for the coming years. Recycling must reach 55% in 2025 and grow to 65% in 2035. Less than 10% of waste must end up in the landfills, and more than 70% of packaging waste must be recycling. Italy, for once, is the first in EU on waste recycling, with France and Germany and so on, and is on the way to achieving goals early. You can see some data about these best performing. These excellent results derive from many things, from the choice of advanced collection models and from the manufacturing system tradition of using recycled raw materials. The key to success, especially for urban waste, was the development of the collection of organic fraction and the development of composting chain and production of biogas and biomethane, which is very important for increasing national energy self-sufficiency. For example, Milan is the largest city in the world where the domestic organic fraction is recycled. This is a very successful case. But also in Italy, we have some problems about waste management. Waste management system have this problem that reside in the lack of plants, and especially in their uneven geographical distribution. This is the main reason why major investment in the sector are needed. An important characteristic of aspect of Italy is the high volume of import of secondary materials. The circular economy aims to increase the amount of material recovered and reintroduced into economy. For this, we need to stabilize the prices of recycling materials. Here we can see the trend of the price of waste paper, for example, that suffered a shock with the Chinese paper ban in 2018. To do this stabilization, powerful tools are the new regulation of ARERA, the Energy Network Environmental Regulatory Authority, the National Waste Management Program, and the National Recovery Plan. Proper waste management represents an important opportunity for Italian industry. The sector has in fact recorded over 25 billion in turnover, employing over 130,000 employees, with over 6,000 companies, with a growth in the sector from the year 2005 to years 2015 of 30% in terms of turnover. The challenge of transition in the circular economy is to consider what is now waste as an element, a brick for a new production cycle, cutting imports of natural resources and emission for landfills and incinerators. Circular economy is a new economic model, particularly suited for the Italian reality, where advanced recycling system can represent an excellent investment. Some recent analyses estimate that the circular economy can contribute over 80 billion euros in GDP and with over 500,000 of employees. I want to end with a very recent news. The EU Commission on 30 March 2022 adopted the communication on making sustainable products the norm, promoting circular business model, empowering consumers in a transition green as announced in the Circular Economy Action Plan that you can see before. Thank you for your attention and again for the opportunity. I point you this book published by Luke, where I edited the chapter on the end of waste, and you can find treated many of the topics I told you about. Thank you very much.
Thank you to Giorgio Ghiringhelli, professor of Luke Università Cattaneo. And now let's move on the roundtable, Finance for Circular Economy. For first, I call Dominic Bubba, Managing Director at Yelco. Good evening, Mr. Bubba. So I'll start with the first question. Yelco is a long-standing and experienced investor within the infrastructure sector. How would you describe your investment focus and which geographic scope are you covering?
Thank you very much, Laura. So indeed, Yelco is a private markets asset manager, giving institutional investors access to private markets investing across infrastructure, private equity, and private debt. And we currently manage around 7 billion of assets across the three asset classes. Within infrastructure, we focus on core plus and opportunistic strategies, which are usually deployed within the developed world, and a focus on Europe, 20-25%, North America, and the remaining capital to be deployed opportunistically across emerging markets. On this strategy itself, Yelco is also a subscriber to the UN Principles of Sustainable Investing. And it is very much an emphasis of ours, particularly on the infrastructure side, that our managers also adhere to these principles and have in mind investing on a very sustainable basis. And indeed, we are currently investing out of our third generation as a fund of fund. And the over 30 managers that we committed on, they are all adherent to the UN Principles of Responsible Investing and provide us with regularly ESG reporting and also a measurement of their ESG targets.
Thank you. And let me go back now to Dominic Bug, for another question. To which extent are investment teams around the circular economy embedded in the investment strategy of your underlying managers, and how important are sustainability aspects for you as an investor?
I would take take this this answer twofold. So on the infrastructure side, you of course see a very large part of the capital. Indeed, if you look all infrastructure private market investments of last year, it's roughly 500 billion globally, have been invested in renewable energy projects, which of course provide the backbone for a circular economy, but are not directly linked to circular economy business models. Additionally, we would even say that considering also the increasing investment within the technology space, that roughly 50% of all private capital infrastructure investments are narrowed within renewable energy and smart infrastructure, which obviously helps to deploy resources in a very consistent and very useful manner. Having said that, on the infrastructure side, apart from that, the investments within waste management and traditional waste management and wastewater treatment is still a relatively small fraction compared to the overall market. We would consider that below 5% probably of what we see. And interesting enough, we rather see the more innovative business models that really change maybe also consumer behavior to involve within our private equity portfolio, who are rather open to develop new business models, who may not have yet the very consistent revenue streams that infrastructure investors itself are relying upon. And indeed, we have one very interesting case study in Germany, where a traditional private equity investor, which we backed a couple of years back, bought into a company called Rebuy, which has developed by now into Europe's largest reseller of used consumer electronics. And what is particularly interesting is that as we also heard from the previous speakers, that of course the avoidance of waste and the is key to maintaining also a useful use of our resources. But on most ends, the consumers still don't get a meaningful offer to avoid these. And what Rebuy did is they created an own online platform, and they are fully integrated in collecting used consumer electronics. They built up their own grading infrastructure, so they review the smartphones and also have the capability in-house with now over 500 people in a plant in Poland in refurbishing these smartphones. And at the same time, they, given that they control the supply chain and the quality of input that they get on that side, they can resell then these the smartphones on their platform with a 2 to 3 year warranty to the private consumer, offering, of course, a very sound product with low barriers, of uncertainty, which usually comes with used goods, compared maybe to a classic e-buy purchase from private to private. And our manager here was essential in providing additional growth capital to the platform in order to have sufficient funding to acquire the used goods from even the private consumer, who can send that to them directly, but more importantly also from large telecommunication providers, where you can source larger batches of high quality product. And over the last years, the company grew by over 20% per annum, and that compares to a global consumer electronics market of 6%, and which also illustrates that investments within circular economy obviously can be highly attractive, because it is a common theme, it is common knowledge that we have to make better use of our resources. It is highly accepted by the private clients, and therefore offers also strong growth opportunities. So outgrowing a rather traditional market, and therefore provides also a very attractive risk-return profile. And as you may recall, Banca Intesa and Bocconi conducted a study last year that circular economy investments might even have a better risk-return profile than the broader investment universe. We would rather see that we can support these findings, given that the circular trend within the market is very strong, and usually players who found their niche in providing that services can operate also at a superior margin compared to a broader, frequently more competitive market.
Thank you very much to Dominic Boo. Maybe we go back to Dominic at the end of the round table just for a last question. Now, let me ask to David Smith, Senior Managing Director, Co-Investment Capital Dynamic. Good evening, David. Regarding your investment experience in companies active in circular economy, how would you describe their priority in the context of the Sustainable Development Goal?
Well, just let me start by first saying thank you to Anna and to Federico for inviting me to join you today. Good afternoon, good evening to you all. Addressing your specific question, Laura, I think the first thing to say is that as a result of a long-established sort of effort in the area, we actually call it responsible investment. So it embraces our being an early signatory to the UN-supported PRI, as Dominic mentioned with his organisation, and then more recently the development of a proprietary framework based on the Sustainable Development Goals. So fundamentally, we believe that a portfolio company, we're mainly in the business that I'm involved with in Capital Dynamics, we're mainly a private equity investor. We do have an extensive infrastructure portfolio as well, but I'll focus the discussion, if I may, today on private equity. We believe a portfolio company's key sustainability priorities should be set according to their greatest impact during our ownership period. So of the 17 SDGs, fundamentally, which of those do I think I can make a difference on, or make a difference to during our ownership period, which as a private equity investor, as you know, tends to be between 3 and 6 years. You know, what can I do in that time frame? And then the wonderful thing I think about private equity is its tight governance model, and the same applies to infrastructure investments, where Dominic's more active at the sound of it. That tight governance model allows us to set these priorities, these sustainability priorities, very effectively. I'm a big fan of examples, so let me illustrate our two areas there, the investment experiences or examples from our portfolio. The first example I'm going to give is actually one that should resonate, I think, quite well with Giorgio. I was interested to hear your remarks, Giorgio, about waste management. The first example I'm going to give is a company, it's a US company, it's based in the Houston area of the United States. It serves a catchment area comprising about 250,000 homes, and it's called Best Trash. The Americans have a lovely approach to naming their companies. As the Americans would say, it does what it says on the tin, best trash. But joking apart, as you've mentioned, Giorgio, and we didn't confer before this call, but perhaps we should have, but I'll be endorsing many of the comments you made a few moments ago. Best Trash's key sustainability goals are based on SDG 6, so that's, I'll abbreviate a little bit the full name: clean water and sanitation, 9, infrastructure, 10, cities and communities, in that it serves a city, in this case Houston, 12, responsible investment in consumption, or more generally perhaps recycling, and then areas you also focused on, Giorgio, SDGs 13, climate, and 15, life on land. Let me go a little bit deeper. The business offers a recycling and pickup service and encourages the adoption of recycling. So therefore, really focused on SDG 12. When we looked at making the investment, the other thing that we really looked at carefully was the proper use of landfill sites. You again, Giorgio, mentioned landfill in your presentation a few moments ago. And the issue there, again, you rightly pointed out, is where organic matter decomposes quite naturally into volatile organic compounds, and more particularly methane, which we also know is a potent greenhouse gas. So those so-called fugitive emissions of methane are avoided by capturing the gas and using it in gas to energy conversion plants. And one of the things we focused on in making that investment was to ensure that all the landfill sites used by Best Trash actually have those plants, so they're containing methane emissions. From a European context, we would probably refer to those as Scope 3 emissions in the supply chain of Best Trash. That's my first example. Second example, and closer to home for you in Italy, Italcare. It's a leading manufacturer of premium ceramic tiles based in the Sassuolo Scandiano cluster in your country. So that's a really interesting one for us. If you step back from ceramic tiles manufacture, you would quite rightly think a business that results in quite an energy intensive activity, glazing, kilns, and so on. That's certainly true. What we've seen under the leadership of the CEO of that business, a very experienced manager called Graziano Verdi, we've seen the company set, with our support, where we're involved at board level. That's the other piece about governance, I think, in private equity. Because of that tight governance I mentioned, you can influence behavior and encourage behavior. So we've seen Graziano and his management team set key sustainability goals and key performance indicators, KPIs, based on a really good range of SDGs. Number 3, good health. Number 5, gender equality. Number 6, clean water and sanitation. Number 8, workplace quality. 9, infrastructure. 12, responsible investment and consumption. And then there's another focus on SDG 7, clean energy. 10, reduced inequalities, climate again, and then life on land, and then 16, governance. There are over 30 individual actions that business has or is taking in relation to the SDGs. I'll summarize a few of them just to give you a few statistics, because I think this really does show how private asset managers can influence businesses and help with the circular economy. Italcare now uses over 50% recycled material in its production process. And that compares with 20% when we first started becoming involved with the business about 5 years ago. Talking a little also about energy and energy efficiency. We've approved recent cogeneration plant or combined heat and power plant investment in that business, and that's expected to reduce energy consumption in terms of electricity by over 7,000 megawatt hours annually, and avoid the emission of about 1,600 tons of CO2 as a result. Again, on the energy efficiency theme, where we have a planned investment in a roof-mounted photovoltaics this year, which will reduce the energy consumption of the affected facility in Rubiera by about 20%. So in summary, I think we believe there's what I call a double bottom line improvement in terms of sustainability and profitability. And all absolutely vital in today's environment of elevated energy costs. I think most of us would agree that. So to summarize the example, really, I think I would say sustainable business is good business. And that's a point recognized by Italcare, having won a recent sustainability award by Università Cattolica. Back to you, Laura.
Thank you. But David Smith again, what is exactly, in your opinion, the relationship between environmental sustainability and the circular economy? Does this lead to enhanced performance? In what way?
Okay, so two very good and opposite questions. Firstly, and I think this has probably come through from my earlier remarks, so I won't repeat them. I'll try to be a bit briefer. We believe the relationship between environmental sustainability and the circular economy is a very tight, and I would say an intimate one. It's very, very close. And that's largely because of our adoption of the SDGs, as I mentioned earlier, to govern the framework of our approach to what we call responsible investment. That term really encompasses the circular economy and more besides in the way that we define it. If you're interested, do have a look at our responsible investment policy on our firm's website, which goes into greater detail. Sort of focusing on your sub-question there, Laura, sort of enhanced performance. Or, we believe, and several research studies corroborate our findings, that this relationship and the focus on the SDGs does indeed lead to enhanced portfolio company performance. I can give you a little bit of a snippet here based on our proprietary data. But if you look at the data we have on a series of entries and exits in companies which embrace sustainability and the circular economy, what we see is that those businesses garner a higher multiple of EBITDA at exit than was applied or was the case at entry. So the responsible stewardship, if you like, of a sustainable business by an asset manager, be it a private equity manager or an infrastructure manager that takes these things seriously, creates value. And the reason for that is that the multiple is higher. The multiple is higher because those companies are deservedly better and more desirable at exit. So in short, and perhaps reiterating the remark I made a few moments ago, I would just say sustainable business is good business. Back to you, Lara.
Thank you. Now I introduce Federico Malgarini, CEO of Innovatech Venture. Good evening, Federico.
Good evening to you. Good evening to everybody.
So Innovatech Venture is the corporate venture capital of a large group. How does it position itself with respect to the issue of the circular economy?
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the question, and thank you for having me today. Well, first of all, I would like to speak a little bit more about what actually it is a corporate venture capital. Corporate venture capital is an investment vehicle embedded into an industrial partner, an industrial corporation. So what we do today is evaluate and invest in technologies that can give a longer view to our business. In particular, our company, Innovatech, the broader Innovatech group, focuses on waste management, waste recovery, and the energy efficiency activities. In that sense, our initiatives as Innovatech Venture target innovative startups that has developed very new and advanced technologies in waste recovery and material recovery from waste. Why? Because as we have heard before, our planet is running towards over 9 billion people in the coming years, and those people would need additional goods, and those goods won't be produced only by mining new metals and raw materials from the planet. So what we need to do coming from now to the coming years is invest in technologies that will be able to extract those matters that are embedded into what is today considered waste. So what we do today is try to invest in advanced technologies that are able to extract those valuable matters from waste. In one example, what we are evaluating today, for example, it's investing into new technologies that are able to extract value from lithium-ion batteries. Everybody of us know that we are running towards a more electrification of mobility, but this also implies that we are going towards a very large production of batteries dedicated to mobility, and those batteries at some point will need to be recovered, or in other way, the material that are trapped into these batteries will get lost. So today we are trying to invest into frontier technologies that are able to recover, especially lithium, cobaltium, and other materials that are trapped into the batteries that will provide for the future also the ability to re-put into the production cycle those kind of materials, in order to create a very efficient closed loop cycle of production, utilization, and then recovery of materials that are trapped into batteries. This is only one of the examples of the investments that we are trying to develop in the upcoming years. Why? Because we evaluated, we in first, as waste managers, because this is what we do as the broader innovative group, we need to be extremely focused on trying to extract the value that is trapped into waste, and trying to produce as much closed loop and efficient circular economy cycles we can, in order to be able to produce value from waste.
Thank you. The last question is about sustainability of electric mobility. You said you are developing a technology for the recovery of lithium batteries. This path could dismiss the idea that even electric cars eventually pollute?
Well, this is what we are trying to put into practice. We know that there are studies, and those studies are used by critics of the electric mobility, that taking into account all the carbonium dioxide produced from cradle to grave of an electric vehicle, can in some way find a match between an electric vehicle and internal combustion vehicle for what concerns the amount of CO2 which is produced from cradle to grave of the vehicle itself. Why this? Because the mining of lithium, the production of batteries, and then end of life of these kind of products is very highly polluting. How we can cope with this problem? Well, the answer that we are trying to develop is that if we can extract the valuable materials that are trapped into these batteries and give them a new life, then we won't be in the need of mining new materials for creating new batteries, and in some way doubling up or tripling up the remaining life of those batteries. This would mean that once you have mined the original lithium, you can use these for 2, 3, 4 new batteries, because when an existing battery reaches the end of its life, the relevant and critical raw materials that are trapped inside can be recovered. This would mean that the CO2 which is produced by mining the original lithium is then split over 3 or 4 lives of an existing batteries. And this would also imply that the CO2 emitted for the production of this battery would be split into 300,000 or 400,000 kilometers of the life of these 2 or 3 batteries. And at the end of the day, this would mean that on an average, creating an efficient process to recover lithium and other materials trapped into batteries would also give the chance to have an electric mobility, electrification of mobility, which will be also competitive from an ecological point of view, cutting by 2 or 3 times the CO2 emissions linked to the single vehicle production.
Thank you. So we have some time. So if I can, let me do a last question just to close the round table. One for all, Bob, Smith, and Malgarini. So what will be one of the trends of the future of circular economy that we do not see at the moment today? Bob.
That's obviously a very interesting question, Laura. The unknown unknowns so far. I mean, what we definitely see is that there is constant innovation in finding ways to recycle products even more, and it will highly depend on the markets and the development stage of the markets. I mean, we have another case study in our portfolio which is providing pre-consumer waste solutions, basically picking up the waste at the grocery stores and major food manufacturers in the United States. Something which is already quite common in Germany when talking to the larger grocery stores, but effectively in the US, which is the largest economy in the world, this was rather a venture capital firm which started business or venture-backed business a couple of years back, which is today serving kind of roughly 10,000 customer locations each day and adding 1,000 more. So it seems a rather common theme that you would think that it's already common practice to avoid these kind of waste, but in many even developed economies, there is still a high need for investment into these business, and therefore I think the things that we don't see are most likely the most obvious ones, which we sometimes even take for granted.
Thank you. David Smith, what do you think about that?
Lara, thank you. I'm glad Dominic went first and put him on the spot with that question and gave me a bit of time to think. I was intrigued by Federico's remarks actually on lithium ion, and when you asked your question, it made me think about that phrase we often use in English, being what I would call the law of unintended consequences. I think Federico, you pointed out that despite the obvious to many people attractions of e-mobility, many people aren't aware of the cost, the carbon cost in particular, of an extractive industry, meaning a mining industry, and the extraction and purification of lithium. We've seen things like that over the years. I'm old enough to remember the introduction of what was called reformulated gasoline, RFG, in the US when I lived there about 25 years ago. The major oil and gas oil companies were trying to improve the octane, the anti-knock performance of what we call petrol where I live, what the Americans call gasoline where they live. And they put in place a whole load of refinery upgrades, which I was involved with at the time, to produce a gasoline that used something called MTBE. Many of us will remember the transition to MTBE. You know, a wonderful idea, paved with all the right intentions, but what people haven't realized is when you start to burn MTBE in a gasoline engine, a regular internal combustion engine, not a diesel engine, you vaporize the MTBE, it goes up into the atmosphere, it condenses, it then rains, and you end up with reservoirs being polluted by MTBE. So I think the lesson there in any environmentally sustainable activity is to really think outside the box and really be aware of the unexpected and what I would call the law of unintended consequences. Be thoughtful about the science, I think, is probably one way of putting it. Back to you.
Thank you. And so, Federico Malgarini, I give you the floor.
And thank you, and thank you, David, for the additional remarks. Well, the real answer maybe it's what won't be into a circular economy cycle from year to 10 years. Starting from the opening remarks, we've seen how waste paper went from 60 to 5 euros per ton into a couple of years. Last year, this exact same paper was 130 euros per ton. Why? Because paper production was extremely costly, because new paper production was completely requested by China, and because energy production was extremely pricey. So this put into a complete new light the recovery of waste paper, because the exact same waste that 6 months ago was paid €5, 2 months ago was paid €120, same waste. So we cannot allow ourselves to put those waste into landfills, because this is an enormous value that we're gonna waste. Another example, also taking the lead from the opening remarks, it's an example of the waste from construction and demolition. 30% of waste in EU comes from construction and demolition. And a certain amount of this waste is, for example, drywall, plasterboard and drywall. 90% in weight of this waste, it's gypsum, and this gypsum goes into landfills, which is a nonsense, because this gypsum can be recovered and whether reused to produce a new plasterboard and drywall, or to be used in agriculture as to produce new food. So the real question is, can we allow ourselves to waste those kind of materials only because we are not ready to invest into new technologies to recover them? I don't think we are we cannot allow this kind of value to be wasted.
Thank you. So now the round table is over. I thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dominic Bubba. Thank you, David Smith, and thank you, Federico Malgarini, for their contribution. And let's move on. Adesso iniziamo la parte in italiano e passo subito la parola a Stefano Baldin, direttore di Digital Waste Municipia, gruppo Engineering, che ci parlerà di PNRR, transizione ecologica, di come le grandi aziende italiane si stanno approcciando al tema e di come possiamo sfruttare le nuove tecnologie per ottimizzare l'intero processo. Grazie a Stefano Baldini.
Grazie a voi, un saluto a tutti, buonasera a tutti. Vorrei iniziare parafrasando il ministro Cingolani. È chiaro che dobbiamo fronteggiare un grave debito ambientale, un debito che, diversamente da quello di natura economica, trascende i confini degli stati e non è esigibile in capo a chi lo ha prodotto. In realtà poi siamo già gravati anche da un debito ambientale contratto nei passati decenni, il cui montante sarà sempre più faticoso a recuperare se non iniziamo subito, se non agiamo per tempo. Ecco, in questo la transizione ecologica deve andare pari passo con quella sociale, perché non possiamo far gravare appunto il pagamento di questo debito ambientale sulle categorie più vulnerabili. In questo senso è chiaro che ci sono dei passaggi chiave dove le grandi aziende, il ruolo dell'Italia devono porre particolare attenzione. Innanzitutto una visione strategica finalizzata a moltiplicare le risorse e i risultati. Cioè le grandi aziende hanno la possibilità, ad esempio, di proporre soluzioni in partenariato con la pubblica amministrazione, anche laddove sono presenti già dei fondi pubblici, perché la normativa prevede che in questo caso il privato debba mettere almeno il 50% più 1 del capitale totale, dell'investimento totale. Quindi è chiaro l'effetto leva. Inoltre, Malgarini ce l'ha spiegato molto bene, la progettazione di tutti i passaggi è fondamentale per prevenire lo spreco di risorse. Le nuove tecnologie ci aiutano anche in questo. Ottimizzare i processi ancora con l'aiuto di appunto queste reingegnerizzazioni anche attraverso la tecnologia, la digitalizzazione, per contenere i costi di gestione. Infine, non dimentichiamo che occorre recuperare le risorse economiche e finanziarie necessarie comunque per far sì che i rifiuti non siano rifiuti, ma siano semplicemente materie nel posto sbagliato. Ecco, in questo caso vuol dire che dobbiamo intervenire sia in tutte le fasi, come ho detto prima, nelle fasi di gestione dei processi, ma anche in quella, chiamiamola, di fruizione, cioè quello in cui ciascuno deve pagare per quello che ha fruito. Quindi un po' come quando compriamo un panino, paghiamo per il panino. Quando dobbiamo farci portare via una materia che per noi non ha più valore, dobbiamo pagare il giusto anche per questo. In questo la tecnologia, certo, gioca sempre un fattore abilitante, direi. Abilitante perché ci permette oggi, con gli apparati IoT e le nuove conoscenze che abbiamo riguardo anche i primi sviluppi di intelligenza artificiale, ci permette di rilevare i dati in maniera più precisa, più puntuale. E inoltre ormai appunto l'abitudine a gestire i big data ci permette di interpretare i dati in un processo che vede la raccolta appunto attraverso gli strumenti IoT, l'organizzazione, la contestualizzazione e l'interpretazione ci permettono di trasformare appunto tutto questo in informazioni e attraverso opportuni processi di data analytics in conoscenza vera e propria. Quindi, infine, un altro elemento in cui la tecnologia è un fattore abilitante è sicuramente la comunicazione. La comunicazione è un fattore, direi, cruciale nell'ambito dei rifiuti, perché deve arrivare direttamente all'utente finale, direttamente sullo smartphone del cittadino, direi, proprio perché in questo possiamo veicolare le modalità più corrette di comportamento. È chiaro che in questo mi vengono in mente tutte le cose che appunto si possono fare oggi, la trasformazione della carta in altre cose, del caffè in altri prodotti, ma anche le posate usa e getta, che sono diventate compostabili, quindi all'interno di nuovi impianti finanziati anche col PNRR. Tutto questo è la fase comunque di raccolta, di distribuzione, di controllo di tutta questa fase, è un elemento importante affinché le materie non vadano perdute. In questo non posso che sposare poi quello che c'è scritto nella brochure del Ministero della Transizione Ecologica in punto di economia circolare, e cioè che appunto in tutto questo dobbiamo coinvolgere proprio tutti i soggetti, dalle ONG alle organizzazioni di imprese, consumatori, il mondo scolastico e universitario, anche gli istituti di ricerca e quindi anche le aziende grandi come le nostre che hanno una componente di ricerca e sviluppo significativa. È chiaro che tutto questo contribuisce verso l'economia circolare, che ha bisogno appunto di un intervento di comunicazione in ogni fase, in ogni momento della nostra vita, in qualsiasi luogo, e quindi la tecnologia è effettivamente un fattore abilitante. Infine c'è da dire che gli obiettivi delle Nazioni Unite e il PNRR, in particolare la missione 2, sono sicuramente un contributo significativo a questo sforzo, a uno sforzo di green economy, in cui tutti appunto dobbiamo contribuire. Tutte le grandi aziende con le loro soluzioni ormai sono impegnate da tempo e a questo punto è il caso forse di metterle a fattor comune anche con un po' di coraggio da parte degli amministratori attraverso azioni appunto, come accennavo in precedenza, di partenariato pubblico-privato. E purtroppo in questo c'è da dire che dobbiamo fare i conti un po' con la paura di questo nuovo strumento da parte dei sindaci, un po' di impreparazione e un po' di, diciamo così, divario distribuito. Io non darei proprio una marcatura nord-sud, ma una marcatura un po' a macchia di leopardo. E in più però anche in virtù del fatto che noi in Italia abbiamo parecchi piccoli comuni e quindi sono carenti proprio di personale e quindi di competenze. In effetti poi lo stesso Ministero ha cercato di compensare un po' questo divario destinando ben il 40% delle risorse al sud del paese. Quindi...
Posso chiederle, rispetto a tutto quello che ha detto e rispetto a quello che hanno detto anche i contributor precedenti, un po' come si colloca Municipia, un po' come Municipia spera di poter superare questa sorta di muro che c'è a livello pubblico sull'ipotesi di un partenariato pubblico-privato, se mettendo sul piatto fattori abilitanti come quelli che ha citato lei prima della tecnologia, o quali altri strumenti, quali altre leve pensa di poter azionare?
Sicuramente siamo già impegnati da qualche anno in proposte di partenariato di iniziativa privata. Ho seguito parecchie proposte e mi sembra che la strada sia da perseguire ancora, magari attraverso un po' di formazione, no? Erogando un po' di formazione gratuita a livello ovviamente basico, perché mi sembra che anche gli sforzi normativi che sta compiendo ARERA nell'ambito del servizi di igiene urbana siano percepiti più come adempimenti burocratici piuttosto che come delle opportunità. In realtà sono una grande opportunità di trasformare i servizi di igiene urbana. È chiaro che i comuni fino ad oggi hanno un po', come dicevo prima, un po' per debolezza strutturale, perché certe competenze non le hanno, quindi non hanno la possibilità di crearsele. Hanno replicato le gare dei servizi di igiene urbana nel tempo. Con questo non possono che ottenere gli stessi risultati o addirittura risultati peggiori, no? Sappiamo tutti che se continuiamo a fare le cose allo stesso modo, il risultato non può cambiare. Quindi il primo elemento è sicuramente questo. Municipia è presente quindi con tutto quello che è il suo contributo nella filiera. La nostra esperienza a livello di TARI, insomma di gestione delle entrate, ma anche di gestione degli altri processi, ci permette di poter dire che la TARI puntuale permette sì di dare una prima applicazione al principio di chi inquina paga, ma in realtà il problema vero non è solo quello, è quello di valorizzare tutto. Allora, attraverso la nostra funzione di System Integrator è possibile appunto che le informazioni, i dati possano essere convogliati adeguatamente e trasformati in informazione e formazione e non solo, in vera e propria conoscenza. Ad esempio, cito il nostro sistema della conoscenza che permette alle amministrazioni di conoscere le relazioni che ci sono tra gli oggetti, tra i soggetti e tra gli oggetti e i soggetti sul proprio territorio e quindi di conoscere veramente tutte le situazioni di necessità, poter andare a fare degli interventi mirati sia anche a livello di servizio di igiene urbana e soprattutto di poter diciamo così, supportare i nuclei familiari davvero bisognosi. Quindi nell'insieme di questo elemento noi lo vediamo anche come un elemento utilissimo a livello di gestione dei servizi. Per esempio, laddove gli enti dovessero optare per il servizio di raccolta stradale, come ha appena fatto per esempio la città di Alessandria, che ha appena pubblicato una gara per un partenariato per l'illuminazione pubblica e la fornitura di isole ecologiche, cioè cassonetti intelligenti interrati in giro per la città, è una scelta ben precisa. Quindi vuol dire che devi poi dotare il titolare, o quantomeno il nucleo familiare, di un accesso a questi cassonetti. Con il sistema della conoscenza puoi non dotare assolutamente nulla, puoi sfruttare la tessera sanitaria perché il sistema della conoscenza ti permette di ricostruire il nucleo familiare o nucleo di convivenza del titolare del servizio di igiene urbana e quindi in qualsiasi momento riconoscere a chi ricondurre il conferimento. Se è un figlio che conferisce rifiuti, immediatamente avete diciamo, l'attribuzione al titolare del contratto con il comune, ad esempio. Queste sono alcune delle cose su cui noi possiamo assolutamente inserirci e soprattutto contribuire nella cosa che avviene normalmente, cioè recuperare le risorse economiche e finanziarie, perché è corretto che ciascuno paghi per quello che fruisce. Quindi andare a individuare soggetti che in qualche misura sfuggono e poi invece recuperare quindi le entrate da chi tiene nascosti i soldi.
Guardi, visto che siamo leggermente in anticipo, le chiedo solo un'ultima battuta rispetto a tutto quello che è stato detto. Secondo lei quanto tempo ci vorrà, che tempistiche abbiamo perché venga concretamente cambiato il paradigma, perché si comincia a capire che bisogna approcciare l'intera materia in maniera diversa?
Io vedo molti segni positivi, direi, sono fiducioso. L'intervento del PNRR, le esperienze come quelle di Novatec, ma anche di altri soggetti, secondo me sono fondamentali e manca poco perché tutto si sviluppi. Secondo me non dobbiamo aspettare molto, sia perché abbiamo tutti capito la necessità e sia perché effettivamente sembra proprio che manchi l'ultimo, non dico l'ultimo miglio, ma l'ultimo centimetro, un piccolo sforzo e poi, come dire, la piena rompe la diga, diciamo così, è un brutto esempio, però tracima e quindi poi dopo quando la strada è aperta, dopo va tutto meglio. Direi che manca poco, però è uno sforzo importante, no? È come quando siamo proprio veramente agli ultimi metri e sembra non avere più energia. In realtà è qui che dobbiamo fare lo sforzo maggiore, ma ci siamo, manca poco secondo me.
Grazie mille. A valle di tutti questi contributi, a valle di tutti questi spunti di riflessione, passo la parola ad Anna Gervasoni direttore del centro EXUF per i saluti conclusivi e perché ci faccia un po' il quadro di tutto quello che è stato raccontato. Grazie.
Grazie a tutti voi, thank you very much. È stato molto interessante. Provo a sintetizzare 3 temi che sono emersi in tutte le relazioni che abbiamo ascoltato, molto, molto interessanti e molto nuove. Stiamo ragionando su 3 cose che devono viaggiare insieme: tanta tecnologia, technology, tanto spirito innovativo, innovative spirit, competenze manageriali e soprattutto quello che noi chiamiamo un new financial approach, un nuovo approccio finanziario. Quindi questi 3 ingredienti che si recuperano in tutti gli interventi che oggi abbiamo fatto portano a dire che questo centro, la nostra università, che non a caso da sempre dalla sua nascita mette insieme competenze di ingegneria, noi abbiamo una scuola di ingegneria con competenze di management sullo stesso piano di fianco per creare nuovi profili manageriali. Noi dobbiamo avere una sfida molto importante, anch'io sono convinta che siamo all'ultimo miglio, dobbiamo dare una spinta a tutti insieme in una direzione dove devono convivere competenze tecnologiche sempre più avanzate, competenze finanziarie nuove. Noi abbiamo visto parlare oggi corporate venture capital, fondi diversi anche come approccio rispetto al passato. Questa è la nuova finanza, è la finanza che sta costruendo un nuovo mondo e questo deve essere sempre affiancato da quella capacità manageriale che hanno le nostre imprese, come l'intervento di Municipi ha dimostrato molto bene, di saper poi tirare le fila di un discorso complicato e anche di un complicato rapporto con la pubblica amministrazione. Abbiamo aperto con Giorgio Ghiringhelli che ci ha fatto vedere anche uno degli ultimi libri della collana Luke. Il prossimo libro della collana Luke sarà proprio su Public-Private Partnership. Abbiamo molti di noi che oggi sono qua collegati, l'hanno scritto, proprio perché vogliamo contribuire al dibattito dove in modo molto lineare cerchiamo di spiegare una cosa complessa. Oggi non si può essere monotematici. Non è più il momento in cui ognuno fa il suo mestiere, quindi quello che fa finanza, il bravo imprenditore sa tutto di management ma non guarda oltre, e poi c'è quello chiuso nella sua stanza che fa tecnologia. No, dobbiamo lavorare tutti insieme lungo una linea che ci porti a raggiungere il più velocemente possibile gli obiettivi che le Nazioni Unite ci hanno fissato e che sono assolutamente imprescindibili. Questo è anche un po' il senso del nostro centro, della ricerca e dell'attività di dissemination che stiamo facendo, e quindi ringrazio tutti per aver dato un contributo importante che poi ritroveremo sul nostro portale XUF anche nelle prossime settimane e nei prossimi mesi. Grazie veramente.
Grazie anche da parte mia per aver potuto partecipare a questo webinar, che è stato non solo interessantissimo ma anche ricco di spunti. Grazie ancora a tutti. Buonasera.
Grazie a tutti, arrivederci.
Grazie, buona serata.
Grazie, arrivederci a tutti.